All right, we'll get started. This is the June town hall for our campus transformation. Again, it's in this webinar format, so there's not as many video screens popping up, but I do miss the interaction with your faces. So please chime in the chat and in the Q&A for questions, comments, anything along those lines, complaints, whatever you want to do, put in there in the Q&A or in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them live. And the ones I don't get to live, we'll follow up with in another communication. As always, we start our meeting talking about quality and safety, and so I'll lead off with that. So we are 21 days injury-free. This statistic is what we track for the job site itself, the actual construction crew. This injury is reportable in terms of how it occurred. So this was actually a guy tweaked a knee carrying plywood. So nothing, when you think of injury, it's lots of severities of that. So I like to share that detail with you so you know what it is. We don't want any kind of injury, but I'd rather have that kind of injury than something more severe. So we've been 21 days since the last injury on the job site. We're at 36 days since construction last impacted operations. I don't believe I had a town hall since then. I had a couple other formats which we discussed this, but the last incident that occurred that impacted operations was when we were doing a tie-in for the medical O2, and a mistake was made where a valve was shut off without turning on the other valve fully. And so what happened is there was a low oxygen flow over to the NICU in particular, and it impacted for a couple minutes there. Until it was quickly corrected, but it's an impact. Thankfully, there's no harm caused by that. But we, for each one of these, we do a root. I don't know if it's a full root cause from that sense, but we do a cause analysis and look at error prevention techniques that could be used to prevent future errors. So that's why we track this. So crucially is that we feel how important it is to what we do every day. Days in construction, we're at 1,270. That's a lot of days. I saw a couple of folks in the cafeteria today right before this town hall, and it was mentioned to me some people have only worked here during construction time period. So for those of us that were here just a few years before it started or for decades, I know we were all excited for this thing to be done. I am tracking days remaining in construction to the end of August. I should probably put like 3 asterisks next to that. I don't have that on here, but that's to the end of August. We've always been tracking that time period. I've not change those days yet. I'll go through phasing a little bit and show you what it'll look like in August and what will be left to be done in September, but substantially we will be completed at that time period. So we're still tracking 88 days from there. I may choose to add days to that at some point, but I haven't yet. All right, let's talk about progress, and then I'll go into the rest of what's happening. Just some photos of what's going on. Obviously, if you've been on the main campus, you've been able to see some of the exterior site work and how great it's looking. When you look at the concourse itself, when I say concourse, I'm talking about the actual physical structure, right? But also it includes this entire exterior part of the front of the hospital. So the driveways, the pavers where there'll be outdoor dining, the emergency room parking and access, a little meditation garden over by the chapel. All of that's included in this same phase, but you can see the exterior work is going really, really well. It's on track for being complete from a construction perspective in July. Again, I'll talk more schedule here in a moment. Here's a view of the canopy. So there is a canopy that you can see there that provides a better weather drop-off option for any vehicles that are picking up or dropping off from the front of the hospital. It'll block it won't block sideways rain, but it'll block a lot of the rain, other precipitation that might be there. In addition to outside the concourse, inside the concourse now, you can see how well it's progressing. Again, it looks so similar to our Laura Sella Pavilion. It's exciting to see it continue to come together here in this kind of atrium feel. Again, in this photo here, my back is to the Laura Sella Pavilion, right? And we're looking towards the hospital tower. On the left there is the exterior where Henry Clay and all the drop-off for cars is located. And on the right is the different things that are being added right off the concourse. The picture right here on the right is an example of that. This is an example of what the Family Resource Center and the gift shop will look like, kind of right next to each other with a little guitar pick located right there. A little bit further along, because it's opening up here in June, is phase 2. We have both our same-day surgery space and our PACU. So this is an example of here, the hallway that's been added inside the unit. So we added the additional rooms. I'm going to forget the number. I'm going to say 12 rooms, but that could be way off. So somebody who knows that number better, that works in that area, let me know. I think they're getting 12 more rooms. It could be a few more than that in the same-day surgery area. Here's an example of the inside of the room. Again, they look gorgeous, just like the other parts of the unit. It's just more of them that get added right in time for that busy summer time period when surgery volumes can typically be a little bit higher because the kids are out of school. I'm gonna keep going. If you all have questions, thoughts, comments, again, put it in the chat. Here's the PACU phase 2. You can see here, because it's all one unit, there's just a little bollard there kind of blocking the area off. That area is open and we were equipping it, ready to go. The only thing really waiting for this unit to open is that the Louisiana Department of Health, LDH, has to come in and bless any new space before it's used for clinical care. So although we can occupy it from a fire marshal perspective, we can be in the spaces. So it doesn't have to be, it's not in active construction, so there's no dust or anything, but it can't be used for patient care until we get that blessing and that inspection. So that'll happen here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be able to turn that space on, that team. Go back down to the first floor, ED fast track area. Again, this area looks really good. It's a little bit further along than the other areas in the first floor ED. I'll show you on the floor plan where this is to delineate the two, but there's ED fast track, ED phase 2, and then the behavioral health ED is kind of what we've referenced them from a construction standpoint, but they all open up together. Again, no more of the ER rooms. If you've been in the current new ER, that essentially is half of a loop. The other half of the loop gets opened up. That's what these spaces are. And then finally, I mentioned the behavioral health section of the ER, a dedicated unit for that space. And then up on the second floor, a West Tower, minor procedure space is coming along nicely. You can see some of the progress there. Let's talk about Roadwork. So back in February of this year, I got everybody all riled up and said we're about to do some road work on Henry Clay Avenue, and it's going to be painful, but it's going to be great at the end. And then two things held us up. The Mississippi River level was too high for us to do any kind of underground and subsurface work. And then also we've been waiting on a permit from the city of New Orleans to finish that road work. What we chose to do was expand our scope a little bit. So therefore we needed to go back to the city and make sure from a permitting perspective, we were all good to go. And so we're in the final stages of that. So what I'll roll out to you guys today is I'll communicate about the impact of the road work. I will not give you a start date. We're hoping it's in the next 7 days or so. And so once we get that communication ready to go and go ahead from the city and from the contractor, we'll of course communicate that out via all methods of email and phone and text and whatever we can, because it will be a big impact to everybody. But just beware of it's coming very, very soon. A couple things to keep in mind, and then I'll show some pictures and maps to kind of go through this. So the road work's going to begin. It'll be phase 1/2 of the road at a time, split down the middle, so that there'll be one-way traffic. It'll be about 3 months duration of work as we repave that area, add some of the pavers and concrete, and then also we're doing underground work related to stormwater drainage as well. Traffic will flow one way from Tchoupitoulas towards the levee lots the whole time. And then when you exit the levee lot, you can't go against traffic on Henry Clay, so you'll exit via Leak Avenue and then head up to State Street. Pedestrian crossing will be moved. What that means is the Sky Bridge will be the only way to cross the street in any convenient manner. I guess you could walk all the way up to Tchoupitoulas and walk through the neighborhood and get back around, but that would not be very convenient for most people. Most everyone will either need to do the Sky Bridge or find some other way to get across, but the road will be blocked for part of this phase. We will have updates. There'll be maps on the internet and via email, so please keep an eye out on that. Be ready to share that with your colleagues and team members. Again, here's a map of what it's going to look like. We've shown something similar to this before. What we're going to have is vehicle traffic flow will go one way from Henry Clay all the way down, and then we'll exit via Leak Avenue to State Street. And then from the levee lot, same thing, you'll exit and go Leak Avenue to State Street. For the staff that are in the garage and or providers that are parked there, we will have this rear entrance open. It has been open and it's on badge access today. That's available for use. We're going to strongly encourage, I guess we can't really require stuff to enforce that, but strongly encourage this to be used at all times by staff and providers in the garage, because it's going to take that many more cars off of this intersection right here. So if there's a few hundred, several hundred folks who park in the garage that aren't patients and visitors, all those cars that go in the back of the garage will really help traffic flow this way. Plus, when you're exiting, it's a lot easier just to exit and get out from that perspective. That's a quick map of the campus. I don't have all the pedestrian routing on this particular image. I'll cover that here in just a moment for you to look at. But essentially, there will always be a way for when you're in the levee lots, you can either walk up the one side of the hospital and either cross the Sky Bridge, or you can walk over to Calhoun Street and enter by the red elevators. Dr. Green, a good question about State Street parking. They're actually working with the city on that. The city will likely require us to block the parking on this side of State Street for traffic flow. A couple people bring that up as a concern last time. So as part of our traffic plan, we have to submit to the city. I think that we will get that required. Good question. So I'm going to try to cover this in broad terms. There's a lot of nuances and details to this that I won't get into, but in broad terms, we're breaking this into two phases. The first phase looks a little bit different than what I communicated in February because of some of the lost time. We're trying to make up for it on the project side. So what this will look like is most likely in the next 7 days, we will start setting out barricades so that no parking can occur on Henry Clay at all, because those cars will not be able to back up into the street because of how shallow the road will be. And the barricades will be in the middle of the road, and the entire west side of Henry Clay, so the side closest to the hospital, or the upriver side, if you're a true New Orleanian native and don't use cardinal directions, that side of the street, and will be all in a construction zone. And that will include that whole side there. So all cars will travel this way. You can still get in and out of the garage, but when you exit the garage, they'll have to exit this way. So there's going to be a heck of a lot of signage, a lot of people out for wayfinding. You might have seen we've even had NOPD detail officers there to help with the traffic flow as well. We're going to do the best we can to communicate it, but we're welcome to for you to communicate it broadly to your colleagues, as well as also feel free to give us comments, suggestions, questions along the way so we can make it as effective as possible. So this will be the first 45 days. You will notice here, I intentionally drew it to where this sidewalk is still available at this phase. Some of the nuances of this is that at some point, this does get touched as well, but it's only a couple weeks at the end, so I didn't want to highlight that here. Bottom line is, please keep alert for emails, stay on top of that, and then there will be at all times signage telling you where you can and can't go, both from a vehicular standpoint and pedestrian. So just be watching out for that. Don't be surprised when things change. We'll communicate it out the best we can in advance. The second phase is that essentially it'll flop. You'll notice here too, one more before I switch over, there's no way to cross the street on Henry Clay. You cannot get from here into the hospital pavilion unless you use the Sky Bridge. So that will be required. Everybody that walks to and from State Street building, same thing, hit the Sky Bridge. Second phase, construction flips to the other side. So one of the nuances here you'll notice is that now, because this side is the blue is open, the traffic's flowing, the sidewalk will be open as well. So when you're walking from the levee lots to get to the hospital, you can still go down the other way and get to the red elevator entrance, or this nice new sidewalk will be open. You can walk up this way and you won't have to take the Sky Bridge in that instance, right? Because it'll be open right there. But if you're coming from the State Street side of campus to and from throughout the day, you will have to take the Sky Bridge. There's no pedestrian crossway across the road. Okay. So again, it just flips. The garage entrance will be open at all times during those phases. There will be a couple times we have to actually do the work on the entrance of the garage itself. We would do that on weekends so that we have minimal impact for those who need to use the garage at that point in time, and the rear entrance to be used for everybody. Good question, Margaret. Families dropping off in front of the pavilion. So I'm actually going to cover a couple of bullet points at the end, but just high level, we will be encouraging, there won't be any drop-offs on Henry Clay itself. So we'll be communicating out for employees and whatnot. They need to pull around. They can use Calhoun Street, deliveries, etc. But families themselves, we're going to have our folks out there. We're going to encourage them to pull in the garage real quick, drop off in the garage, and take the Sky Bridge over. So some of the people we have out there managing traffic will help people navigate that. It's a great question. So key takeaways for everybody, and then I'll move on from the road work. The priority on Henry Clay is traffic flow. So employee drop-offs, if you have somebody that drops you off for work, or you go to get lunch and somebody brings you back, whatever that is, that's happening on Calhoun Street. No cars will be stopping on Henry Clay. The shuttle, that will move to the Calhoun Street entrance as well. And deliveries will happen at that area as well. So if you're in a department that gets deliveries, I'm thinking the food services team has the armored truck I see park out there. I've seen the lab have couriers. Any department sales reps or vendors for surgery, none of that stuff is going to be happening on Henry Clay. It's all need to happen on Calhoun Street. So please direct those folks to do that. For people, medical staff and garage parkers, again, use that second and rear entrance. Check your emails regularly, and then watch for pedestrian detours. We do care a lot about pedestrian safety in this. This is one of our key focuses, and so we want to make sure we're getting that message out. Great question, Lynn. We're going to direct anybody we can get in touch with. We're going to tell them to where they can meet. If we can't get them in advance, they'll be directed to pull in the garage right there and wait at the bottom of that elevator bank if they show up live. All right, I'll move on from Roadwork and go to the rest of the schedule. Again, please keep the questions coming. I'll answer them as best I can live or get to them later. One more. The street in front of the Parkland Calhoun campus that we have requested the city, that is the city street. We have requested they work on that, and we are going to be continuing to escalate that need. I know it is a mess right now in terms of potholes. So I'm going to go through kind of a schedule, and then I'll go through some pictures. So what's happening next is the PACU and same-day surgery opens up phase 2. I already showed you some pictures from that. That's opening in June. Pharmacy and RT, I have July. It's probably cheating a little bit. It's probably like July 31st. So, but I'm still leaving that as July, the first phase of that pharmacy and RT area. And then an area that we haven't covered a whole lot because it's a pretty back of house, but I thought it'd be important to mention is there's additional support services area that opens up as well later in July. So like the biomed area, the mobile managed equipment team, public safety, the operator's space gets reconfigured when public safety moves around. Credit union, a lot of folks are interested in that space. And then the volunteer offices all happen in July. I'll show you where that is on the map. And then as we close out, ED, concourse. When I say concourse, okay, I listed the departments here I'm referring to. It's not just the walkway, but it includes the second phase of dining. It includes the gift shop, the chapel, the Family Resources Center. All that is concourse, okay, when I use that term. Minor procedure space is really late August. I left it on there in case there's a chance it opens in August. It probably likely bleeds into September a little bit. Child life, same thing. And then we know the second phase of pharmacy and the coffee shop elevators, we know that's going to be, because it's dependent on the other phasing. We don't see how that's going to be completely finished in August, up in September for that. Here's what it looks like from a phasing perspective, okay? So if you look at the building from a bird's eye view, you've got the existing area today. So here's the drum elevators. This is surgery waiting, right? You walk around and into the little check-in space and you have all these rooms. So the dark orange is the phase 2 that's opening up both for same-day surgery as well as for PACU. Actually, I drew the line wrong. It's actually back here too for PACU. So that's what opens up in June. One note, please, for those of you who have seen this space, there is a door that now leads into the center tower where 2 Center is. We have signs up to say authorized personnel only. Please know you are not authorized. We do not want that door used. That leads straight into the emergency department where it's on 2 Center today. And that's where the behavioral health patients are. So there's risk of elopement and other things that we don't want to have happen if we use that door. It is badge reader from the other side, so it can't be exited, but we don't want a lot of traffic through that space. So please don't go on a joy hunt and go explore that space just yet. Let's wait till the ED folks move out of that area. But that's on the hallway behind the kind of the PACU and phase 2 area. Corey Sims gave us a thank you in the chat. Yes, this is really important. I mean, we can't actually like block it because it's a fire exit. Otherwise I would block it and like put a screw in the door, not let anybody open it. But really, please do not, please tell your staff not to use that door. There'll be some new signs up imploring that as far as we can within regulations. This is a lot. I'm gonna try to cover it in the map the best I can. So when we say August and what it's gonna look like, here's the things that get opened, okay? So in August, the entire concourse, this whole area gets opened. And so you'll be able to walk from the pavilion straight into the concourse. The dining room, the phase 2 of that will be open. The main welcome desk, the gift shop, the family resource center or family lounge, I think we're calling it family resource center, is there. The emergency department. So the front part here is the check-in. And then you got we call it fast track. Corey, correct me if I'm using terms you're not going to use in the long term, but from a construction standpoint, we're calling this the fast track area. Then you've got the rest of the kind of acute area, the kind of the second phase, opening the ED up. And in the very back of the ED is the behavioral health section. That all opens up one fell swoop in the month of August. As you continue around the bend here, you'll see the chapel. This is really, okay, going back and dating myself here, the circular door we used to all go in the main lobby, that's right here in the olden days, okay? So you're that far down. The chapel is located right here, along with the conference room area and the blue elevators. All of that space opens up in August. So what that means from the access to the building perspective is that no longer will this door be used for emergency department patients, okay? Ambulances will always stay on the back, but this entire Calhoun Street will now be closed off to parents and everybody will be on the front of the hospital. So you'll have, of course, public access through the pavilion and the sky bridge. The new kind of main entrance and drop-off area will be open, as well as the emergency department entrance for parents, family, patient. You know, when they arrive via their own vehicle, that's where they'll come in. Just to kind of point to you what it's going to look like. So I want folks to picture this, okay? In August, that's what we look like from the outside, okay? It's gonna look done. The entire exterior will be completed. All of the front hardscaping, all of the road work will be finishing, and depending on when we get this road work started, but the entire front here will be open, the driveway, etc. What will likely be in place, considering it's June 3rd, and I told you it's a 90-day project to do the road work, what likely will happen is that we'll have the hospital side of Henry Clay open so that you can drive in and access the hospital. And then the east side road work probably still be under completion, but everything else will still be as it is. Inside the concourse, it'll look like this, okay? So that now I'm looking at today at where the pavilion is, and Miss Yolanda and that crew sits and checks people in and always greets people, Mr. Anthony, all that crew, Miss Leola, they all sit right there, right, at that desk. And you'll be able to see that from the front of the cafeteria. The concourse will extend all the way down. Same look and feel as you walk all the way down the concourse. Now here's the emergency department entrance I just referenced. So that's what it's gonna look like in August, y'all. Like, it's gonna feel done. So we've been tracking end of August as our date for when the construction's over with, because there's still some smaller projects that are happening in the facility. But for most users, for most stakeholders, staff, parents, etc., it'll feel like, wow, construction's done or pretty close to being done. So what's left after August? What's next to have happen? I want to cover now. Feel free to again chime in with questions in the meantime. So what's left is that on the back half of the hospital, you're going to have this minor procedure space that'll be opening up at September on here. I think it's pretty safe to say. The other thing I didn't note on here, but is open in this phase, is that concourse. So before, we just had the phase 2 of the same-day surgery and PACU opened up, but you're still accessing it from inside the units. Well, when the concourse opens in August, you'll be able to access it from the actual outside the concourse here, the waiting space. Dr. Green, I see your question. I'm going to address it here in just a minute. And then the other thing that's happening after, in terms of minor procedures on the front of the hospital, the child life space opens later. Now, the reason child life can't open sooner, it's going to feel like this space here in the concourse is going to look and feel done, but a lot of their area gets renovated here into center, and we can't begin that work until ER moves out. So once ED moves out, then we'll begin some of the work that has to happen for child life to be fully activated. Child life's always been at the last of the projects. We're saving the best for last for that whole team. The other thing that I want to mention right now, Dr. Green, you saw your question. So the only two things that really are left on the first floor that we can't do until the concourse opens is we're going to work on the coffee shop. So today, when you go enter the cafeteria, you're walking through the future coffee shop. So we had to phase it that way just to get into the building. But essentially today, right, here's the drum elevators. You kind of walk through this space to get to the servery to get the food. That space you're walking through is the future coffee shop. So once all this opens up, we don't need to access the cafeteria through the side door. We'll turn that into a construction zone and renovate that and flip that into the coffee shop. And then the yellow elevator space is the next to get done. If you look at the floor in that pavilion, you walk up to where the elevators are, all the terrazzo stops, and it's that old linoleum or that vinyl flooring that picks up and will be replaced at the very end of the project as well. So that's from a department perspective. Now, I didn't put the pharmacy and respiratory space on here that's opening up, but that space and then the third floor physician's lounge opens up in the similar time frame up on the third floor of that area. So what have I not covered that's related to the construction project or the campus transformation? Probably the biggest thing is elevators. So you've noticed when we open up the new tower, and the elevator bank that leads up to surgery and leads up to CICU, they're labeled the drum elevators. And so you might remember that we communicated this. We probably shared that it was because all elevators will eventually be renamed. So that's what's left to be done. So at the end of the project, as we start to roll this thing out, we're going to be changing the elevator branding. So each elevator that the public uses, so not every elevator in the whole facility, but each one that the public uses will be rebranded and will, instead of being the primary color, since that color scheme is a little bit outdated and doesn't match the rest of the facility, we're going to rebrand everything on this musical theme that you've seen throughout the whole campus. So in addition to the drum elevator, which exists, the red elevators will be renamed the trombone. That's misspelled, I just noticed, sorry for that. The blue elevators will be renamed saxophone. Yellow elevators will become the piano, and the green elevators will become the trumpet. And so an example of what that might look like, this is a rendering, do not hold me to this picture, we're still finalizing the art, but what you might see is something like this. You might recall that every floor has their own color now. So instead of the elevator being a color, the floor has a color. The first floor is blue, the first floor is green, second floor is blue. Third floor, CICU, right, is the crushed cranberry. Fourth floor, if you've been up to the hemonc space, is that beautiful purple-ish color, violet color. All of those color schemes will match the floor, and then the graphics will be installed in some capacity. It may not look like this. We're going to try to paint the doors so they look like this. It might be just on the side. Like if you look at the drum elevators today, it's just on the sides because they're still finalizing how to get this done on the elevator doors correctly, but they'll be pretty easily branded and labeled as such. And then all the wayfinding in the hospital will also be changing at that time. So that's a big project. It's not necessarily on the same timetable as everything else because we have to get everything open first, but as we roll those out, we'll be communicating that. A couple questions come in. Yellow elevators, I did address that. We're going to be addressing that from a branding, labeling perspective, as well as that first floor lobby. One thing I did forget to mention, let me cover this real quick so I don't forget. When this is going to be a little bit of a pain point from a wayfinding perspective and a navigation perspective. When the yellow elevators are done on the first floor, you're not going to be able to access the clinic from the first floor. So you might recall we had to do this a couple of years ago where you go up to a floor and then over and down. The same thing will happen for these few weeks while that work is done. You have to go up the second floor, cross over, go take the greens down and get to the clinic. So when that happens, we'll get that, of course, that word out. That's a pretty big reroute, but we'll see that happen for that that renovation part. And then in terms of the upgrades, yes, the mechanics, many of you have felt this pain. I certainly have felt it. The blue and red elevators are extremely outdated from a mechanical standpoint, and we're spending a lot of money to get those things rehabbed. So like everything with COVID, there's delays with shipments and all that stuff. So I don't have a schedule yet from the manufacturers and the vendors, but the blue elevators and the reds are going to be completely redone from the inside out. They will be operating as a brand new elevator once that work is done. That timeline is not short. So think months and months from now, not weeks and weeks from now. When we get more dates on that, we'll be happy to share that. But the entire mechanics, the buttons, the elevator cables, the computer stuff, everything that controls the elevator will be updated for both the blues and the reds. And the confetti emoji is definitely appreciated. Question from Melissa. Will the hallway between the yellow elevator and the coffee shop be closed during construction right there? This hallway actually is a good question, Melissa. I was about to tell you it's going to be open the whole time. There might be a couple of times we may have to tweak that a little bit. So I'll get back to you on that once we study that a little bit more. There is some issues with the terrazzo in the floor right there. If you've ever studied that, there's some cracks in the floor. So at some point we do need to replace that, but I haven't studied that from a footprint standpoint to tell you for sure. So I'm going to jot that down as a follow-up so I don't forget. Great questions. Okay, that is the bulk of my presentation. I want to make sure I cover the elevator piece. What other things have I not touched on that you are interested in that I can provide an update on as we get closer and closer to the end of this project? What have I not covered today? I'm anxiously waiting to see if there's a chat. I don't see the 3 bubbles like when you work on your text messaging. Couple Q&As coming in here. Great question, Lizzie. Construction right now is scheduled to begin in mid-July on Ronald McDonald. My plan when I get that inked into, put into stone, was to communicate that out. So very likely, of course, by the 1st of July, I'll have that update if it's going to begin in mid-July or not. But yes, right now that's the plan. And it's I'm going to say about a 14-month project. It could be a little bit less, could be closer to a year, but plan on 12 to 14 months of construction given no other major delays. That will have a big impact to the campus access. So when we get that plan and finalized and where the construction fences are going and driveways, we'll need to get that communicated out. What else have we covered? I'm gonna give you another minute and then I'll close it off. Yes, Birgit, the day we finish this construction, we're going to work on the next thing. That's the goal. But in all sincerity, we have gotten a lot of questions about the ACC clinic, and we're certainly working together with that to understand what that might look like. As you can imagine, there's not only the current clinic space in the ACC, but there's also a lot of physician offices in that area. And so we've kind of begun the process of moving some physicians over to the State Street building, and all those impacts we need to consider. So there'll be a group of leadership, both on the physician and administrative side, looking at what that next phase looks like. Certainly we need to get funding to do that, but also look at the holistic picture about how we want to use that space. So there's not a plan is what I'm telling you right now. We're working on one, but there's no domino effect of beginning the clinic next. I did not cover things off campus on here. I didn't cover the Metairie freestanding emergency department or any of that. I certainly can do that the next time as well. In ICU, from the anonymous attendee, I don't know who's asking that, but I'm happy to answer that. There's not a current plan for NICU. It's not in this phase or in this, in this funding that was given by the board back in 2016. But certainly we want to look at that. I know a lot of our physicians and providers and staff, and myself included, would really like to do some work on a NICU renovation or a new NICU. So that's kind of in the same category as the ACC work. It's something that we know we want to do at some point. It's just a matter of getting it going. So if you have a contact with your senior vice president, whoever that may be, between Jamie and Lou and Jonathan, grab them and find out from them if they're working on any kind of business plan. And then I know we're working together on that. Credit union, yeah, let me show that on the map. Great point. Corey, yes, you have moved your unit a lot. Again, like absolute saints, the ER people are. Y'all in the EVS definitely win for the most moves. And you guys in particular, since you're a patient care area, have done a lot of work. All right, let me answer this question about where credit union is. If I can find my cursor. Right now, when you go down this hallway, there's new restrooms. Okay, you're on your way to red. On that hallway on the left, you actually will see like a glassed-in area. That's where like the volunteer services is located. I think it's right here, and then the credit union's right around this place here. That's all located off this hallway. Volunteers, or credit union, etc. Okay, I'm going to close it up there. Let's do more questions. Thanks everybody for your time. Reach out with any specifics that we didn't get to cover today. Thank you.